Hi, here's May and welcome to this video, which will be part 2 of talking about some Softober illustrations. I decided to do Softober since I wanted to do something like Inktober, but then not just Inktober since I wanted to work with colors. I also talked about this in the first video, but yeah, in this video I'll continue talking about the illustrations. Original prompt list for this is from @bunnykisses on Pinterest. As you can see, I didn't do all the 31 days, but I just picked 12. And I really like about these challenges, you can decide how serious you want to be with them, unless it's something formal like a contest. In the end, what's important is that you have fun with it and can try something new and challenge yourself with prompt lists or challenges like these. And from the 12 illustrations, I'll now talk about the 6 ones left. I will show you a quick time lapse, and before that the mood board for the illustration, which was always fun to make. And then I'll also mention one art tip per illustration, which was something I learned or I applied while drawing. Let's start with the first illustration, for which the prompt was party. This is the mood board I used for the illustration. You can see there's lots of colorful clothes and some accessoires. I really wanted the outfit to have lots of small details like hair clips and hair accessoires. And you see that I basically just used the outfit from one of the references and drew it on the character. Sometimes I like to take individual pieces from outfits and combine them. Sometimes I will come up with some pieces myself, but sometimes I will just find an outfit I think really looks cool and just try drawing it. Then in illustration, I went a bit crazy with the poses at first, since I wanted them to be very dynamic to represent the party theme. Overall, I was inspired by this one pose photography I had in my mood board for the pose, but then I changed up the angle to be kind of from above, which is also a good way of practicing some perspective and foreshortening. And a tip for this illustration would be to draw the hands separately from the body if you want to. You can first look at the pose and how the arms are angled, and then you can figure out which general angle the hands could be in. Then you can go through some hand pose references or come up with a possible pose. I like to do this for hands since, other than the face, I think those are what I probably draw the most and can be very expressive. For the outfit, combining small details or patterns with something basic can really work well. For this outfit, there's this basic black shirt, but then this very colorful jacket, and on top some small patterns or details. It can be kind of challenging when you use a lot of colors in your outfit to have them all work together, but to make it work, what you can do is having a unifying color like the purple for the hair and the pants of the character, and also using black. But then for the colorful jacket, it works as this standalone piece, and all the small accessoires, having them all be in different colors, it also overall works. It's important to not just use colors everywhere, but then also not to have your outfit be too boring. That's it for the first illustration. Now let's move on to the second one, for which the prompt was glow. In the mood board I included some hand poses like I do most of the time, but then also a cap, which was something I wanted to include in the outfit. I also had these different pose references. Overall, glowing outfit pieces were also a big inspiration. And finally, for the colors and lighting, I was very inspired by all these neon lit photographies or illustrations having this turquoise and pink or blue and pink lighting. And for the illustration itself, I drew from the different pose references you saw, and then I picked one of them but changed up some things about the pose. I also experimented with having the leg be in the pose, but went without it in the end, since none of the other illustrations had the leg in them. And for the faces, I then decided to go for this kind of head that's very tilted to the side, which is something I don't draw very often. But yeah, in this illustration you can really see how I combined all my references to create one thing. For the outfit, I then finally combined different outfit pieces, and I also included this big jacket. And the tip for this illustration is about the lighting. You can change the overall color of the skin of the character to fit the lighting. In general, it's good to keep in mind that you don't always have to use realistic colors. Here the skin is very pink or red because of the pink light, but then there's also this turquoise rim light. In general, when you play with lighting colors, what I like is to use complementary colors. Usually I'd go for dark blue shadows and a bright orange or yellowish light source, but you can also change this up as well. Here it's pink and turquoise, and for example you could also have a purple and orange. In the end, in the illustration, I also had these pieces that were kind of translucent, which was also something I associate with the glowing theme. This is it for this illustration, and now let's move on to the third one. The prompt for this one was time. The mood board for this is pretty different from all the other ones to me, since it includes more of a vintage aesthetic and brown desaturated colors. You can see there are lots of watches in there, because that's what you would probably automatically associate with time. I also used some of them in the illustration. Then I also had this pose reference, and I really wanted the outfit to feel a bit timeless, something you wouldn't see from any time era, but rather it feels a bit out of this world maybe. And I included lots of images from the game For All Time, which is a Chinese game, from which I just find the illustrations very pretty, and they also fit the theme. I tried using some foreshortening in the illustration at first, but then went with a straight-on perspective. And the tip for this illustration would be that when you get an idea while you're drawing, you can use your canvas to not forget it and just sketch the idea on the side of it. When you, for example, want to add an accessoire later on, but first you want to complete another part of the it's helpful to leave a small indication, like a text or arrow, so when you later look back at your illustration, you will see it again. What can happen is that when you focus on something else, you forget your idea, especially if you're really focused. And I did this in this illustration with the pattern, which I wanted to be on part of the outfit. I struggled with the lower hand looking nice, since it was holding this cylindrical object, and I couldn't find reference that had a hand at this angle with a similarly shaped object in it. And maybe I could have also taken a reference image myself, but in the end, hand turned out okay to me. It could have been better. It just doesn't completely look like the character is holding the clock. What I also noticed is that both clocks are placed next to the character's hand, which I think is kind of nice to emphasis to them. I had 3 color variations for the illustration, and I asked on my Instagram story which one I should go for, since I kind of liked all of the color schemes were pretty different from ones I would usually go for. And then I included this golden hour lighting, since it kind of connects with the time motif. And I would also describe the colors as kind of sandy, which you can also connect with the sand in an hourglass. That's it for the third illustration. Now let's move on to the fourth one, which was based around the prompt princess. The mood board here included some crowns and tiaras, of course, but then also a very translucent type of fabric with some small lace patterns and flowers as well. And I also used some of the references for the pose again. And while drawing, I struggled with the left hand in its pose a lot. I had this reference, but for some reason I couldn't get it to look right. And the upper body overall looks too long to me from the pose. But since the character was wearing a dress, it's not that noticeable in the end. And I had this one pattern which I duplicated and then transformed to fit on the outfit, which was also one of the tips from the first video. But for the tip for this illustration, it's that when you are deciding on hairstyle, you can separate the hair into front, back and even sides. If you're unsure about it, you can try drawing separate parts, like some different kinds of bangs and then some long hair, maybe a ponytail, maybe short hair, and combine those hair sketches in the sketching phase still. And then afterwards, you can look at your combinations and decide which one you like the most. In this illustration, I got to try a different type of fabric. It's very translucent and puffy. The fabric has many small folds, and I simplified those folds into fewer folds, but I made sure to make them look very rounded. It's good to keep in mind that different types of clothing have different types of folds. And you can also see that I used painterly stroke for the outfit, which is something I wouldn't do for some outfits with just regular fabric. I used those strokes like in the hair to just portray that there's lots of color variation in it. Now let's move on to the fifth illustration based around the prompt internet. And this mood board is a pretty stark contrast to the princess and time one to me, since it's very modern, maybe futuristic outfit pieces. Other than that, there were also some internet aesthetic things I found and tabs of older Windows PCs. And I was inspired by this one outfit piece I saw to just have those tabs be on part of the outfit. I basically used one of the photographs in the mood board as a pose reference, but when drawing, the left shoulder that's leaned on the PC is too far to the side to me, probably. It doesn't look anatomically correct. The outfit and hairstyle are very sharp and pointy, which was also something I noticed that many of the modern futuristic outfits include. Then you can see I went with this pink and blue color palette, mainly blue for the character, but then also a bit of purple. Overall, these are my favorite kinds of colors. The tip for this illustration is to use background elements that interact with the character. You can see that this character is leaning on the PC in the front, and you can also separate your illustration into foreground, middle ground and background. In this artwork there's kind of only a foreground and then the background, but you could say that the elements behind the character, this arcade machine and the other PCs in the back, are in the middle ground, and then in the background we have this lineup of electronics. Also the elements in the background tend to be lighter with less contrast than the ones in front, just to make the elements in the foreground stand out more. You can see that in the background I reused some older aesthetic kind of sticker electronics I created a while ago, so this could also be a small tip that you can create some elements like electronics, or for example I also have those ghosts, some clouds, some gems and diamonds, flowers, space elements even, which I have as these PNGs, and I could just import them as background elements into my illustrations. And with that we come to the final Softober illustration. The prompt for this one was candy. The mood board for this featured lots of saturated colors that are based around pink. Of course, lots of candies. I wanted the character to have this very cute energy, and I was inspired to do a pose from above from this one photograph. I often struggle with foreshortened poses, but for this one I think the pose works mostly, except for the arms maybe. And since this was the last illustration, I really wanted to do something I hadn't done with the other ones, which is why I went for this ponytail hairstyle. I also wasn't sure about the outfit. I wanted a short skirt or pants and a short shirt as well. I didn't know if I wanted them to be tight or not, but since I didn't really include a skirt in the other illustration, I decided to go for a skirt in the end. Drawing the long hair was a bit hard, especially making the strands look nice, but there's always something about drawing long hair I really like, just having it flow nicely. And the tip for this illustration is to use parallel guidelines that fit into the body's pose or the perspective to have objects on your character be symmetrical. I used this for the necklace. I just basically drew some parallel lines that would fit on the chest of the character. You can also do this for hair accessories, for example, but if you want to draw something on the head, you just have to make sure that your guidelines follow the object's curvature or perspective. For the head you would use rounded guidelines, for example. While sketching, I also sketched and even line arted some arm accessories, but then I decided not to add them in the end since I just preferred the version without it. For the color palette, I couldn't decide. I really wanted something colorful, cute and pastel-y. I had too much colors in my color palette at first, I think, but then I created some different versions and asked on Instagram again which one I should go for, and in the end I went with this pink and yellow one, which I'm glad about. But I also included a bit of purple in the hair, and I separated the hair coloring into a few parts so that there could be a gradient in the bangs but also in the ponytail, which was something I didn't really include in the others, to have the hair have a gradient. And in this illustration I tried some different shading colors but went with a very warm shading in a kind of pink hue. This is kind of opposite to the tip I said before with the complementary colors for shading. Here I only really used one color to light and shade, but this can work as well. So just keep in mind that the tip, also the other tips I mentioned before, they are not advice you should always follow, but it's rather a guideline. And in the first video I already talked about using patterns on clothes. Here I went with this lollipop pattern, and for those lollipops, it would have been better and more time saving to already have them in flat colors rather than coloring all of them separately. This is also why I didn't go for very detailed colors for them, just for basic gradients. Only coloring one and then duplicating it would have been better probably. So this is also a tip in case you want to use a pattern that has detailed coloring. It's good to already have the flat colors in a basic version, which you can then duplicate and add your shading on top, depending on where on the piece of clothing or body it is. And for the backgrounds, you can see that for this one I went with a rather basic one, but for all of them I mostly used some PNGs I got from this one site. I just noted the PNGs and images from there are free to use, which I'm very grateful about, since I'm not the type of person to always draw a detailed background and perspective. I enjoy just having a simplified aesthetic background. That's it for the final illustration for this video. I had a lot of fun drawing all of these and learned about the different prompts I picked. I also discovered kind of aesthetic, colors and so on I would associate with the different prompts, and I got to practice some different hairstyles, outfits and poses, which was very fun. And here is how I would, and if I had to rate the 6 illustrations from this video, here's the order I would put them in. You can also comment which of them you like the most. If you have any ideas for another character design based challenge you would like to see me do or you want to do yourself, or maybe from the prompt list I used, what prompt you would have picked. If you have ideas on that, you can leave them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you have a great day. Goodbye.